Welcome to the Conscious Radio Network. Become enlightened, have fun, and tell all your friends and family to share with everyone they know. You can watch us on YouTube and Rumble while following us on Facebook, or find us on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Our podcasts can be found on Libsyn, iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. Most of all, remember to go to our official website at consciousradionetwork.com for past episodes, future shows, and scheduling. We also want to welcome our international audience. Don't stop now. Enjoy the community. Subscribe or follow today.
This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good day, everybody, wherever you might be on this spaceship we call Earth. Welcome to Conscious Radio Network's podcast series, The Seance. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Beckes. If this is your first time, please click subscribe, like, share, comment, and also don't forget to follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. And also don't forget to support us on Patreon or at Project Truth. Links are in the show description. And today we are humbled with her presence. When I saw numbers, I'm like, oh my God, I'm bad at math, but I'm sure that 4% is going to mean a lot, and how this will elevate your life and how this formula will transform you. Her work lies in the intersection of connection, community, and change as she empowers individuals and organizations to prioritize mindfulness and healing so that they can live more aligned and fulfilling lives. She is a somatic practitioner who promotes an integrated approach to healing through the use of yoga, meditation, breath work, and sound healing. The founder of Move and Still Nourish Wellness Collective and hosts the School of Healing podcast. Her book, Hold Space to Heal, is available now. Her two daughters, Yara and Zuri, are her greatest joy. Let's welcome to the show for the first time, Dominique Clifton. Welcome, my friend.
Hi there.
How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat today.
So am I. I always like to talk to people. We got to do more of that.
I know. Yeah, I know. Especially in our digital age, I think conversations, are so important.
People always looking at their phone, and it's like, and don't even look up. There's a lot up there, So, what is the 4% formula?
Yeah. So I laughed when you said, I'm not a numbers guy. And I'm like, neither am I. What are we talking about today? And I'm like, yes. So the 4% formula is a process that I have been using personally for the last 4.5 years. And it has gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, this is so good. It's transformed my life so much that I need to share this out with the world. Essentially, it's a daily soul care practice of nourishing mind, body, and spirit. So I really believe that, of course, we are spiritual beings having a human existence, which requires us to really nourish all the parts of ourselves. We do really good sometimes of nourishing that physical part. So like taking care of the body, but we might neglect the spirit, or we might neglect the mindset, or, the mind. And so 4.5 years ago, I was meditating. I was at a point where lots of things around me were falling apart. It was March of 2020. And so there were things going on personally for me. And then we know what was happening on a global level for us as a humanity. Mm-hmm. And so, it was the time in my life where nothing made sense and I had no answers. And at that point, really the only thing I knew to do was to be still and hope that, something would come, because I tried to figure it out on my own and nothing was coming to me. And so one day I was meditating after a few days of meditating, and I got this download that said every day for the next 90 days, focus on your mind, your body, and your spirit. And so I came out of that meditation, wrote it down, and I jumped into it either that same day or the next day. And essentially that has become the 4% formula. It didn't always have this fancy name, but it's 15 minutes of daily mindset work, 15 minutes of spiritual work. And of course that looks different for each of us. And we can talk about some of the specifics of what these things look like. And then 30 minutes of physical movement daily. So that comes up to 1 hour. And where the 4% comes in is that I was doing the math on how I could convince people that, y'all, this doesn't take a long time. Like, I promise you, you can do this. When you take 1 hour and you divide that, the 24 hours in a day, by that 1 hour, it's only 4% of our day. And so 4%, the 4% formula comes from taking 1 hour for yourself. The last thing I'll say here, and then I'll pause, is that this practice is not intended to be one chunk of an hour, because I recognize that for some people, right, with very busy schedules, an hour can be a long time, just that one chunk. And so I get really clever and I divide that time up. And so I do my 15 minutes in the morning when I first wake up, because that's when I feel most in tune with my spirit. And so I'll sit and I'll meditate and I journal, and then I go to the gym and I'll do my 30 minutes. Some days I go for a walk, or I might, go for a swim. And then the 15 minutes of mindset is just like listening in the car, or listening in the shower, listening when I'm, loading the dishwasher. And so you can get creative about how that time is split up. But that is the 4% formula, and it has completely transformed my life. I'm now sharing it out with others and sharing it with clients, and I'm really starting to see how it's impacting other folks. So that is just a brief introduction of the 4% formula.
Yeah. And that's good that you don't have to, because a lot of people get, man, an hour can be a while,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be consecutive.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be consecutive. And besides, some of us need to do it more than one time a day and break it up.
Yeah.
Because the middle of your day, work could be so stressed, you just got to go, okay, I got to stop for a moment. And yeah. So, what are some of these results, or what can be some results that someone can expect?
Yeah. So before I answer that question, if it's okay with you, I would love to share a little bit about like why this, I would call it like formula, works so well.
Yeah.
So if you think about those three parts that I just named, mind, body, spirit, right? When you think about the mind, we are a mirror. And so everything that's happening externally is a reflection of the things going on internally. And so wherever your life is right now, right, you can look at what's going on inside of me to kind of figure out where you might need to make some shifts. And so the beautiful thing about the mindset work is that it helps you to become more aware. So meditation is a part of that mindset process, listening to podcasts such as this, things that are positive, things that are going to fill you, things that are going to motivate you and really get that momentum going as you think about goal setting and just reaching, working towards this person that you aspire to become. That daily mindset work helps you to start becoming more aware of your thoughts, your beliefs, your patterns, like where you might be getting stuck, right? Like where there are outdated paradigms that might need to be released. And so that can be anything, again, positive, motivational videos, podcasts, audible books, like whatever feels good to you. That's the first thing. The second thing is the body work is really important, because moving your body daily, physical movement is actually the number one way to release stress. And we know that most of us in our very stressed out modern world are dealing with a lot of stress, and that builds over time. It manifests physically, it manifests with our mental health when we don't allow that energy to be released. And so by moving the body daily, as we are incurring stress daily, we give our bodies a chance to release that stress consistently. And then the last part about nourishing the spirit is, one, we are able to plug into this beautiful power source that is, spirit, higher self, universal consciousness. But it also helps us to begin to slow down. A lot of times we're operating in survival mode or fight or flight, that stress response, and we don't realize it often. And so when we slow down, we're able to start hearing from our intuition clearly, which really helps us to be more in alignment with who we are intended to be, who our souls came here to be. And so that is just a little bit about like how these practices work with those parts of us.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, what happens is that how you do one thing is how you do everything. So when you start to build this consistent practice with nourishing yourself, one of the greatest things, and the reason why I called it the 4% formula for consistency, is that it builds your consistency in other places. And so I'm a better mother today because I'm more consistent. I'm a better entrepreneur because I'm more consistent, because really, like, anything that you're doing requires constant cultivation. And so this soul care practice, as I called it, has helped me to be a more consistent human, which has translated into achieving goals that I set and like being willing to work towards and disciplined with working towards those goals. And then I would say the other biggest thing is that you become a lot clearer about who you are. And so I was someone who was kind of fumbling around in the dark for many years as an adult and just not really being clear on my purpose and what I was intended to do. And I found that by showing up for myself consistently, by really working on cultivating that relationship with myself, right? By being intentional about how I was nurturing and caring for myself, I started to become clear on my purpose. I started to become clear on my assignment. And so that translated into my professional role and how I show up as an entrepreneur, how I show up as a business owner. And again, like I'm seeing these things now with my clients, which is really beautiful because where we lack clarity, we oftentimes stall, procrastinate, get stuck. And so
Yeah.
those are just some of the benefits of why this daily practice is so powerful. It's not just like a personal practice, but it also translates into the other parts of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you mentioned exercise, moving the body,
Yeah.
people don't exercise enough. And I
Yeah.
realized that. And when I started getting back into exercise, and it doesn't have to mean going to the gym,
Yes.
stuff like that. It just means going out and, go out in the yard, go out to a park,
Yeah.
go out and just, jog or, just move around. It helps
Yeah.
clean and clear the your lymphatic system. Gets all the
Mm-hmm.
toxins out of your system.
Mm-hmm.
So a punching bag. I've seen people get a punching bag, hang it in the garage or something like that, and just gets the stress out,
Yeah. Yes.
detoxifies. And I can see how that we all wake up every day, and we have a task. It seems like
Mm-hmm.
we have this task, but there are some people out there that are waking up every day and are confused.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know. They know they have a task, but
Yeah.
they feel like they're displaced somehow. How can the 4% formula help them?
Yeah. I will say that I was some people for most of my life up until about 2 years ago, maybe. Like I've been doing this practice for 4.5 years, but it's been a lot of, again, like just allowing myself to be guided and to figure things out. And so there was most of my adult life, I would say, where I existed, where I was doing things, but nothing was really feeling in alignment. But there's
Yeah.
something about like I'm re-listening to the compound effect now, and like how over time things really build and compound, and finally you get to this space of like, aha, I figured this thing out. But what happens is when we are confused, what oftentimes happens is that we seek answers externally.
Mm,
So we'll want to talk to our therapist and we want them to tell us what our purpose is. Or maybe we hire and invest in a coach, which was what I was doing when I first started out in my entrepreneurship and professional development journey. And I was, throwing all this money at coaches and like wanting someone to tell me what I needed to do and to give me the answers. And then I would get frustrated when no one could tell me and nothing that they were telling me was working.
yeah.
And what I realized, whether it's a coach, your therapist, your partner, we always, from a young age, we are conditioned as children mostly to seek answers externally. Adults have the answers. And then as we grow older, that translates to, other people have the answers. We are often not really taught to go inward and to connect with ourselves. And I am a firm believer that most of the answers, maybe not all of them, like the universe will guide you to people and resources that can help you. But so many of the answers that we need are right here within us. The problem is that many of us don't slow down long enough to open ourselves up to receive those answers, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so if we allow ourselves with this is where the daily spiritual practice becomes so important. It's because that self time, that time that you spend with yourself where you cut off all the distractions, and that can be journaling, it can be meditating, it can be getting outside in nature and just allowing yourself to be present, whatever that feels like for you, prayer, all of these things are part of that spiritual journey. When you allow yourself to consistently have that quiet time, that stillness time, you'll notice that the answers start to come to you. Like, I think it's really powerful why I can literally write a question down that I'm not clear on these days. And
Yeah.
instead of going to someone else and saying, hey, Reverend Dr. Paul, can you help me out, figure this out? If I just allow myself to be still, I am amazed at how connected I am because I've been cultivating this practice, this connection with the universe and spirit over time. And so for anyone who is confused about life, purpose, career, and needing answers, one of the greatest things that you can do is slow down and allow yourself to receive those answers, because the other folks that we oftentimes seek answers from, like, we all have the same ability to connect to the same higher power, right? Like, no one is more connected or less connected than anyone else. The problem is that many of us don't have that consistent practice where we can receive what we are trying to receive. And so that's the
Mm,
power of the spiritual practice happening consistently, is that you learn that I am just as intuitive as the next person. I just need to allow myself to receive those answers.
yeah. It's learning how to ask.
Yes.
Yes, learning, teaching people how to ask. And I'm sure there's. Have you gotten a lot of skeptics and stuff, or turned skeptics into believers?
I would say so far the folks that I've gotten, I think that there's almost like for the folks that I've shared this practice with so far, there haven't been a ton of skeptics. It's actually been on the opposite end
Mm,
where it resonates with people, almost like a knowingness of like, yeah, this makes sense.
yeah.
And then one of the biggest things I would say too is that I when I started this challenge, or when I started this as a challenge 4.5 years ago, I jumped into doing all of those things because that's how my meditation guided me to do so. But I am an advocate now of like building. And so I don't say start with all of them. Like, it's building from week to week. And so when I'm working with clients, I'm like, we start with mindset, because the subconscious mind is the hardest piece to get on board when it comes to change. Anytime the subconscious mind feels that anything is new or threatening, is going to take you out of your comfort zone, there's going to be resistance, right? And
Mhm.
that oftentimes keeps us stuck and keeps us from taking action on the life that we desire.
Yeah.
And so we start with mindset, right? We start with that. We get that down, a week, 2 weeks, you're doing that practice consistently for 15 minutes. And then we build, and then we add on the spirit piece, and then we add on the physical piece. And so if you want to jump into trying this, of course, you can try all things, but you can also just start with 15 minutes. And the reason why I share this is because oftentimes skepticism is like a subconscious belief, right? There's something there that you got to like kind of do some mindset work around. But oftentimes I will say that folks almost have an intuitive knowing of like, there's something that's been off and this resonates, like this makes sense. And so it actually hasn't been very hard to convince people to do this. I would say the challenge has been making it work for their lifestyle, which, you find clever ways to squeeze an hour into your day.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we move any further, how
Yeah.
can people find you? For those who are watching, you can see it scrolling down the bottom, and it'll also be in the show notes. But where can people find you?
Yes. So thank you for asking and allowing me to share. My website is domrclifton.com. So DOM, the letter R, Clifton, CLIFTON.com.
Cool. And you are also on social media?
Yes, so I am on social media. I don't hang out there as much these days, but I will share. I'm on I'm on Instagram mostly as Dominique R. Clifton, and then on LinkedIn as well as Dominique R. Clifton. And if you go to my website, you can connect to those places there as well.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Um, what seems to be the most common issue um, that somebody will seek help with you? Come to you with, like, I got this problem or that problem. What's usually the most common?
Yeah. Usually I will say that it's one of two things. The first thing we've already talked a bit about is the lack of clarity,
Mm,
right? And being at a space of like feeling like there is more, feeling called to do more, but being unsure of how to start taking action on that more. And again, oftentimes a lack of clarity requires being still, right? Like beginning to build that relationship with self, beginning to reconnect to our intuition, because oftentimes we become very disconnected from that internal voice. And so a part of supporting clients is helping them to get clear. And then the other part is I see a lot like clients coming because they're feeling unfulfilled. We
mm,
have, as adults, oftentimes, like we've been taught, if you do these things, right, you'll feel good, you'll get success, you'll have all the things you want. And so what do? We check all the boxes. We go to school, we, meet the partner, we have the kids, we get the picket fence, like we do all of these things. And then you wake up one day and you're looking around at this life that you worked so hard for, that you thought that you wanted, and it doesn't feel fulfilling for you. And so there's this like knowingness almost, or like this void that we oftentimes try to fill with external things. So whether it's food, substance use, shopping, whatever we try to do to distract ourselves, there's something missing internally, and we're trying to figure out how to shape that void that we're feeling. And so clients, when they come to me, one of the greatest things that we do is I'm a business coach, but the first half of my program is all about self-discovery and really spending time with self. Because as a business coach, like I've learned from investing in many coaches over the years, that I don't have your answers, right? Like you have those answers. Spirit's going to give them to you directly, but I
mm,
can give you the tools. I can give you the resources. I can give you strategies such as, the 4% formula. to help you to figure it out. And so that's really I view my role as a coach as more of a guide, where I'm really just illuminating the path for you based on what I've known and found. I've experimented and tried a lot of things. And so I'm always trying to illuminate the path for clients to really do that self-discovery work themselves. But I never pretend to have the answers, because everyone's purpose and assignments are so different and they're so unique to us. And so again, like, I love tools such as astrology and human design as ways to get to know yourself better. But even outside of those things, if we just literally just allow ourselves to slow down and be still, you can write down a question in a journal that you have, or ask out loud to the universe a question that you have. And if you allow those answers to come to you, they will come. The challenge for most folks is that our egos, that mind, it's very loud, and the intuition is a very quiet voice. And so it can be easy to overlook that voice, or not to hear that voice, because the ego is loud. We're distracted by so many things. And so usually when clients come to me, again, it's helping them to get clear about their purpose and their passions. And, there's work that we can do to figure that out. But it's also to, once they get that clarity, to align them with the path that's for them, to help to feel some of that unfulfillment and that void that they're currently feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. What would you say to somebody that says they don't have enough time? Like, oh man, I don't have enough time. I don't have an hour in a day to prioritize myself. What would you say to them?
Yeah. So the first thing is, we've talked a bit about recognizing, there's a few things. We talked about recognizing that, this doesn't have to be a consecutive hour. And so you can find 15 minutes here, 30 minutes there, that sort of thing. I was on a podcast the other day, and I was like, if a 4% formula doesn't work for you starting out, break it down to 2, like do a 2% formula. So literally, like, instead of an hour, give yourself 30 minutes. Like, you deserve 30 minutes out of a 24-hour day to prioritize yourself. And so literally everything that I've said, just chop it in half, 7.5 minutes on something positive for your mindset, 7.5 minutes on sitting with yourself and cultivating that spiritual relationship, and 15 minutes of movement. And surely you can find that time. The other part of that is that we make time for things that we value. And so if you are absolutely just, adamant about, I don't have time, it requires a shift in values for you to recognize that you deserve to prioritize yourself. Because if you look at your time, it shows you what you value. And so if a chunk of your time is being taken up by work, and a chunk of your time is being taken up by giving to other people, and all of these things, it becomes a matter of repositioning your values a bit to recognize that you do deserve to be in the fold in the midst of all the other things that you prioritize. And so looking at someone's calendar or how they spend their time will show you what they value. And for the people that think they don't have time, it's being creative about where we spend our time, because we can spend a ton of time scrolling social media and then say that we don't have time. Or we can spend a ton of time, doing things that aren't really moving the needle on our goals, but, Netflix or whatever the case. And it's no judgment, because we all have outlets and things that we need. But again, being creative about, maybe I shift 30 minutes away from watching TV and I spend that 30 minutes on myself, becomes really important. And then the last thing I'll say here, Reverend Dr. Paul, is that I think it's important to start small and build. I'm an advocate of like small wins, right? Like finding those small wins, because that builds momentum. And so that's why, again, I teach, just start with 15 minutes. Like, I'm not asking you to do a full hour right away. Start with that 15 minutes consistently. Check that off daily, right? You want to track and measure your progress. And what happens is, over time, by being accountable to yourself and checking that off for a few days, few weeks, you start to feel good, because you're keeping your word to yourself. And so that actually motivates you to keep going with this thing. And then once you start to feel better, because that's what's going to happen, you're going to be more motivated to find the time that you need. And so wherever you can start, even if it's just for 5 minutes, like, start with giving yourself that time, and then just allow your practice to build over time.
And I could see how this could also build personal discipline.
Oh, yes.
We all have some lack in that somewhere in our habits, is that discipline.
Yeah.
And I can see how too, where once somebody connects, when you're starting small and you suddenly, like, after 1 or 2 sessions or a couple days, and you start getting the answers, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Then you're going to go, okay, I
Yeah.
definitely need to dedicate more time to this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're going to start getting a habit of
Hmm.
doing it every day. Because when you start, like you said, when you start getting results, you start changing your mind, going, okay, I'm going to put more effort and more prioritization to this practice.
Yeah. Getting more answers, moving your body daily is going to help with your stress. So you're going to start to feel better. You're going to have more energy, right? Those endorphins, those feel good
Mm-hmm.
hormones are going to be released. So your mood is going to start to improve. Like these are all benefits of this practice. And what you said is true is that, yeah, once I feel less stressed, then I correlate that less stress is because I'm moving my body consistently, or maybe I'm starting to notice that I'm being more conscious about the things that I'm eating because
Yeah.
I'm moving my body and now I'm seeing the physical results. Like all of these things go together. Once you start to see the positive results, that's the momentum that you need to keep going. I used to be the queen of inconsistency. I didn't share that. So when I started this practice 4.5 years ago, oh man, I struggled those first couple of weeks with like the first 3 or 4 weeks with doing this.
Yeah.
I was maybe doing two of the three or one of the three, but it was really hard. But I kept going. And at the end of 90 days, it was like a rock solid routine for me because I had done it so consistently. And that's why now it's like, again, 4% formula for consistency. When you build the discipline in this one part of your life, it trickles into other parts of your life. And so if you struggle with showing up consistently in business, like I used to be knowing what I needed to do as an entrepreneur, but not always doing those things, getting stuff and getting in my own way. And now that level of discipline not only helps me with this one part of my life, but it spills over into all the other parts. So you become someone who is disciplined and keeps your word to yourself and to others, which of course is a byproduct of just practicing. And of course, you're going to feel better in the end as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you
It's
do you
really
mainly
powerful.
do online or remote or also in person?
Yeah, so I do a little bit of both. So my coaching business is online, so I can reach people all over the world, which is such a blessing for us
Oh
to
yeah.
have technology. And then I also I really love holding space for groups. And so I also, outside of being a coach, I own a B2B business, Move and Still. And I share more there about like mindfulness and healing and stress management. And I get to work with folks in person, and I'm a yoga instructor, breathwork and meditation instructor. And so I get to hold space for people to be still and to go through some of this, the process of reconnecting with themselves that we've talked about today. And as much as I enjoy like online and I'm grateful for having that opportunity to connect with folks all over, there's something really beautiful about being in community with people in person and being able to hold space in that way. And so I cherish moments where I do get to get out and get into my community, or, if I'm able to travel and do things, because it's just so beautiful to be able to create a safe container for people to come back to themselves. Because that's what I see it as. And anytime we do something where we connect with ourselves spiritually, it's a coming home to self.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially starting, working with your local community and
Hmm.
getting out there. Because I could see how this could also be very useful for some of like your local community outreach programs,
Hmm. Hmm.
like some of the AA programs, and
Yeah.
you know uh, those who have, I would say, like some of the mental issue programs and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Maybe possibly, have you seen this? But those might be, I wouldn't say suffering, but lack of a better word,
Yeah.
suffering from like extreme PTSD, ADHD, different things to where it's like, okay, because it could potentially calm somebody down and start looking inward.
Yeah, so I have had the fortune of working with lots of different folks and being able to hold space and teach these same sort of practices. I worked with my youngest was around 4 years old, all the way up to 96, and being
Mm.
able to share information and hold space. And the audiences have ranged. So I've done employee well-being programs where I've shared these sorts of strategies and techniques, but I've also worked with women that were in the justice system that returned home, and now they're trying to, get on track after going through being incarcerated. And so
Oof. Yeah.
returning citizens and, needing these sorts of strategies and techniques. And they talked about how powerful it is to have techniques to calm the body and, to reconnect with themselves. And so that's been a really beautiful space to support. I've gotten to work with older folks who, have gone through their lives never really having this sort of connection. I feel like now we're talking more, having open conversations about these things, but folks before, they weren't doing as much with mental health and things of that nature. And so I've gotten to work with what we would call like senior citizens and, the more elderly populations. And it's been really, really beautiful for them to talk about pain, physical ailments that they've been having that are starting to be alleviated and, just feeling calmer. And then I've also gotten to work at rec centers in my city. And that I think is probably one of the coolest things is schools and rec centers where I'm getting to work with young people who, like you said, ADHD and their attention spans are super short because of technology and, all of these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And just giving them, a lot of times we're planting seeds when you do this. Like it takes people a while for this stuff to really catch on. But for kids, I think it's really beautiful to be able to plant seeds for, hey, this is a resource, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's movement, like these are resources for you to calm down, for you to feel less stressed or overwhelmed because, life is overwhelming for the kids now too. So it's been really cool to see these techniques and strategies that we're talking about, these resources translate to many different types of people and to see the benefits no matter who I'm working with.
Yeah. It's definitely better than video games because I tell you, video games can make you, I was never into video games. Thank God. So, what's been the, now you gave a little bit of a hint of age ranges and stuff like that. This is pretty much all. This is the whole spectrum of life.
Yeah.
What's been the youngest and oldest client?
Yeah. So youngest, if I count my own children, youngest was probably about 2.5 because I started sitting. She's almost 5. Well, she'll be 5 on Wednesday.
Happy birthday!
But thank you. She was about 2.5 when I started to introduce like breath work and yoga as a modality for her. And my older daughter, I have 2 girls. My oldest it's harder for her to be still. And so it's not something that I force, but I always use it again as like a planting of a seed and like letting you know that this is a resource. And even if it's just like 2 minutes of stillness, it's like whenever you're feeling overwhelmed and you need to come back to this, like you always have these practices. So about 2.5 was my own children, but outside of that, working with kids as young as 4 years old and being able to like just give them tools and resources that make sense for them. And so one of the things that I pride myself on is like taking these very like what we might call spiritual or more woo-woo concepts or like, talking about regulating the nervous system. And it's like, how can I make this practical and easy and tangible for everyday people? That was really my, I would say my vision and mission when I started my B2B business is I want to make this easy, right? I want to make this doable. Yeah. And so one of the biggest things, like when you're working with kids, I'm just like, hey, we're going to do the bubble breath. And it's like blowing bubbles. And it's like, they just think that they're imitating blowing bubbles, but really I'm giving them a resource to help calm their nervous system, to help them learn to be still and stay connected with their intuitions. And then for older folks, like it's, again, a lot of times these mental health and therapy and all of these things that weren't necessarily topics of conversation 30, 40 years ago, it's even allowing them to come home to self, so it's really beautiful being in, having had the opportunity to sit with older people at recreation centers in my city and folks that had never, had a consistent yoga or mindfulness practice to sit and to see that connection being made at that point in their lives. And it goes to show that at any point in your life, you can start these things. It's no time, no certain age that it's applicable for. But it was really beautiful to have older women coming up to me and saying, I've been having a headache for the last couple of months and my headache is starting to go away. Like stress manifests in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And, it could be something internally going on that's manifesting physically. And so to have an older person who's been struggling with having consistent, or like persistent, I should say, headaches and ailments start to say, I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to feel that pain go away. Is really beautiful. And they're doing these mindfulness strategies. They're moving their bodies, they're sitting with themselves. And so their energy is starting to shift. And so 4 to 96 so far has been the range that I've worked with. And it's been such a joy just to share ways with people for them to regulate their nervous systems, for them to reconnect with themselves, for them to release the stress that they're holding that they oftentimes don't realize that they're holding.
Yeah. Beautiful. Wow.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So before we wrap up the show, again, where can they, the listeners, viewers, where can they find you?
Yes. So the best place to connect with me is my website, domrclifton.com, DOMR Clifton, CLIFTON. And if you are on social, I am on LinkedIn and Instagram as Dominique R. Clifton, my full name in those spaces.
And that can all be found on your website, those links.
Yes. Yep.
Cool. And we will have that information in the show notes. So if anybody listening, that'll all be in the show notes and stuff like that. So it's all hyperlinked in there so they can find you. So before we wrap up the show, what would you like to offer our audience today as a takeaway?
The biggest thing is that it goes back to the question of if someone's thinking, I don't have time for this, or, this isn't a priority for me. I am doing the work that I'm doing today in my grandmother's legacy. So she's no longer with us. She's in the ancestral realm now. And her life, after she passed away and I was an older adult, I started trying to unpack why her life was the way that it was. So my grandmother at 50 years old had a brain aneurysm. She suffered multiple strokes. She had high cholesterol. She had high blood pressure. She had diabetes. It's like you name it, and I'm checking it off on the medical form history, like the medical history form at the doctor's. And I started asking, like, why did she have all of these things? Like, why was her life this way? And when I was younger, I just thought it was because she was old, right? Like, and then now that I got older, I'm like, wait, 50 is not old. Like, 50 is the prime of your life, right?
And so I'm not like, that far along. I'm like, oh my God,
I'm like, that's not the reason. It's not because she was old, like hindsight 2020. But I started asking questions, and what I started realizing is that my grandmother had so much unresolved stress and trauma starting at a very young age. 2 years old, she lost her mother. So that was like the beginning of it. Wow. And it was just like a lifetime of not dealing with, right? Like not prioritizing herself, giving to others, all the things that we talked about today. And eventually it caught up with her. And so I am such an advocate, and I'm so passionate about this work because I've seen what happens when we don't prioritize ourselves. Like I've seen the extreme of that, and that might feel extreme to someone, but there are stories like that that are happening every day. Like someone one day seems, air quotes, relatively healthy, and then the next day they're suffering a heart attack or something like that is happening. And I don't think we should wait for life to hit us upside the head or have this big moment take us out, right? Or sit us down for us to prioritize ourselves. We can start with 5 minutes or 10 minutes and just allow ourselves to build. And so the biggest thing is you can't afford not to do these things, right? Like you can't afford not to take care of yourself. And even if you don't follow my way with the 4% formula, find something that works for you and do that consistently, because otherwise it will eventually catch up with you.
Yeah. And this is so easy. I mean, this is better than going to the gym.
Good. Good stuff. I mean, I love it. It's changed my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dominique, blessings, my friend.
Thank you. How are you feeling about math now?
Much better. Much better.
Okay.
much better. Next time I have to do another formula or the, a bigger formula.
Yeah.
Much bigger formula. I'm going to have to meditate on it.
Good. Yes. There we go. Awesome.
Yeah. Blessings, my friend. Thank you again for joining us today. And keep me posted on what's coming next. Are you going to be doing any traveling and sharing your work anytime soon?
I am open to opportunities. A lot of the things that I'm doing right now are more online. I mean, I have my local business where I'm doing a lot of B2B work. Other than that, a lot of my coaching clients are coming to me online, but I am open to traveling if anyone wants to, have me come to their organization or their community to share more about what we've discussed today. So definitely open, and that is hopefully on the horizon more.
Yeah, any of those, because there's metaphysical fairs and stuff all over the country. They're everywhere. We got a bunch of them here in Florida. Almost on a weekly basis, weekend basis. But
awesome.
Those are always opportunities. Definitely. You have a book. You got a book coming out anytime soon?
I do. I have a book.
There you go.
I have a book. So my book is called Hold Space to Heal. And I wrote that book about a year and a half ago now. And it really talks deeper about the things that we've talked about today. So again, like how our body stores stress and trauma. And then I give somatic practices that you can use to aid you in your healing process. And so before we hit record, we talked about like sound healing as a modality. There's breath work, there's, physical movement, all these wonderful things we can do. So it goes deeper into essentially what we've talked about today. So if anyone is interested in learning more or diving deeper into these topics and the way that stress and trauma manifests physically, energetically, you can check out my book, Hold Space to Heal, and it's available on Amazon. It's a wonderful resource to dive deeper.
Cool. And that's also on your website.
Yes, it is.
Great. The one-stop shop.
One-stop shop is there.
Cool. Blessings.
Thank you.
Blessings. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you. Namaste. Yes.
You were very, very, very welcome.
Mhm.
Thank you, everybody, for chiming in to the seance. And until next time, we will see you that next time.
Mhm.